Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you my personal video settings for the Sony ZV-E10. I'm not claiming these are the best settings for this camera, but these are the settings that I use for like 95% of the time to shoot with the Sony ZV-E10. So first, let's start with the menu. So shoot mode is set to manual exposure because I expose manually pretty much every single shot. Then USB streaming, I barely touch this option. If I'm going to live stream, I am going to use the camera that I'm using right now to record this, the Sony a7 IV. File format is set to XAVCS 4K and I film in 4K for the best image quality possible from the Sony ZV-E10. Then record setting is set to 25p 100 mbits, which again will provide me the best image quality possible. S&Q settings, I barely film slow motion with either of my cameras, but when I do, I film in 100 fps and then the camera converts it to 25p, which is basically 4 times slow motion. Page number 2, proxy recording is set to off, autofocus transition speed and autofocus subject shift sensitivity is set to 4 and 3. This basically will adjust the speed of the autofocus and mine is set to the default setting, but sometimes I do want the autofocus to be slower, so we'll dial down this number to make the autofocus transition a bit slower than what I have at the moment. Auto slow shutter is set to off, initial focus magnification is set to 1, audio recording is set to on because I do want to record audio. Then page number 3, audio record level, I set it manually, depends on the microphone that I'm going to use. If I'm using my Rode Wireless Go 2, I'm going to set it to a different level. Then if I'm going to use my shotgun microphone, which is the Saramonic VMAX 5 Pro shotgun microphone. Audio level display is set to on because I do want to see what are my audio levels to properly adjust the audio gain so I won't have any distortion or something like that. Audio out timing is set to live. Honestly, I have no idea what this setting is for. If you know, let me know in the comments down below, please. Wind noise reduction is set to off because I don't want the camera to apply anything to my audio. If I need to reduce any wind noise, then I can do it manually in post-production. But for the most part, if I am in a windy condition, I'm going to use one of these wind muffs on my microphones to completely eliminate wind noise in my audio. Next, steady shot is set to off at the moment, but I am using stabilization. Sometimes it's really rare, but sometimes I do use it. Steady shot settings, I'm not touching. Page number 4, marker display is set to off. Marker settings, I'm not going to touch. Emphasize display during recording is set to on. This will basically put a red bracket around the display to show me that the camera is actually recording, and it's very handy. Next thing is record lamp, basically the same thing as the square on the screen. Then movie with shutter is set to on. This will basically allow me to record with the shutter button rather than with the record button. I want to use the record button for something else. That's why I set my shutter button to also record video. Page number 5, if front curtain shutter set to on, I have no idea what this thing does. Release without lens disable, release without card enable, steady shot off. Page number 6, zoom range, mine is set to optical zoom only, but sometimes I will use the clear image zoom if I want to zoom in a little bit and I don't have the option to zoom in with my actual lens, because you barely lose any quality when you use clear image zoom. I use it on my Sony a7 IV and also on the ZV-E10 sometimes. Then zoom lever speed, I'm not touching. Custom key zoom speed, I'm not touching. Remote zoom speed, I'm not touching. Display button, this is what I have. Graphic display is off, I don't need that. Then all these settings are on. Zebra settings, I'm gonna talk about zebras a bit later in the video because zebras are really important on this camera. Grid line at the moment is set to off, but sometimes I will enable the rule of thirds grid just to properly compose my shots. Exposure set guide is set to off. Auto review is set to off. Page number 8, custom key. Let me show you quickly what are my custom buttons on the Sony ZV-E10. All right, so the first button, I've set mine to pick in display select. This will basically enable picking, focus peaking, and disable focus peaking when I don't need it. Then I have white balance. I'm changing white balance all the time. Picture profile, I'm also changing my picture profile. Sometimes depends on the situation. I'm gonna talk about picture profile a bit later on. Then follow costume, it's basically the same setting that I use on my photo settings, and that's ISO. With this button I control the ISO. Then zebra level, because I'm using zebras a lot to expose my shots, and like I said, I'm going to talk about zebras a bit later on. Next I have the two buttons in the front, and the first button is autofocus, manual focus, control toggle. With this I'll be able to switch between autofocus and manual focus really quickly, especially when I don't have the option on the kit lens. Beside that, I have the focus area to select from wide to area to a single point, whatever I need. And finally we have the button on the lens, which I don't really use because I'm just using the kit lens. So playback, custom key I'm not going to touch. Then function menu settings, let me show you all the settings quickly. So I have here audio record level to adjust the audio record level really quickly if I need to. Then this is manual focus and autofocus, focus area, peaking, autofocus speed, autofocus sensitivity. Then I have here, I don't even know what. Then picture profile, zebras, white balance, face tracking, important as well, and steady shot if I need to quickly enable steady shot. Then dial wheel setup, I have this button for the shutter speed, and this is for the aperture. Then dial wheel EV compensation I set to off, and final page, function of touch operation, touch to focus, dial wheel lock unlock, and audio signals set to on. Now let me show you my picture profile and also how I expose my shots for the best result possible. So if I'm gonna click on the left button, it's gonna open my picture profile menu, and this is my picture profile, PP7. I've set mine to S-Log2. Now the color mode, I set mine to ITU 709 matrix. And I'm not really going to explain too much why I do it, because Caleb Pike from DSLR Video Shooter made a great video about this. I'm gonna leave it somewhere on the screen or maybe in the description box down below if you want to know exactly what are the benefits of shooting in this profile and this color mode, I mean. But basically, because this camera is shooting in 8-bit and not 10-bit, with this color mode, it's gonna be much easier to color grade, to color correct, I should say, and the colors aren't going to fall apart as when you're shooting in S-Log3 with the color mode set to S-Gamut or S-Gamut 3 Cine. Everything else is pretty much set to default except detail. I've set mine to -7 because I don't want the camera to add artificial sharpness. If I need some sharpness, I mean, I can add sharpness in post-production in Final Cut Pro. So that's it when it comes to picture profile. Now let me show you how I expose S-Log2 for the best results possible. So this is where zebras come in. I'm gonna click the down button here, the zebra menu is going to pop, and I have two costume zebra levels. I have 32 and I have 43 standard range ±2. So basically 32 is middle gray for S-Log2, the default middle gray for S-Log2. So here I have a color passport, and this is middle gray here in the middle. And if I'm going to adjust the ISO to properly expose the shot, I should see zebras once the middle gray is set to 32. And here I see zebras. You see the zebras on the middle gray? That means now this shot is exposed to 32 IRE middle gray. But because this camera is shooting in 8-bit, you see a lot of noise, especially in the shadows. To combat that, I overexpose my shots by 1.5, 1.6 times, which is exactly 43 IRE. So I set my exposure to 43 IRE, middle gray, and then I know my shot is overexposed by 1.5 times from 32 IRE. So now all I have to do is set the middle gray to 43 IRE. So I'm going to select the zebra level, and then I'm going to adjust the exposure until I'm going to see zebras, which is exactly here. Now my shot is overexposed by exactly 1.5 or 1.6 times. And this basically will give me a cleaner image in the shadows. Yes, it will overexpose the highlights a little bit, but at least the shadow area is gonna be much cleaner. Alright, so right now I am filming with the Sony a7 IV with the 20mm f1.8 in S-Log3 because this camera has 10-bit video. And now let me mount the Sony ZV-E10 with the Tamron 11 to 20 f2.8 and show you how it looks like with the settings that I've shown you before. And right now I'm filming with the Sony ZV-E10 with the settings that I showed you before. So S-Log2, ITU 709 matrix color mode, detail -7, and also I overexposed this shot by 1.5 stops. So if I'm gonna take my color passport checker and I'm gonna put it beside my face, you will see zebras. So you see the zebras here in the middle gray. That means I am overexposed in this shot by 1.5, 1.6 stops from 32 IRE middle gray. And I always overexpose my shots because, again, this will give me less noise in the image, especially in the shadows, and I want my image to look as clean as possible. A couple of extra things that I want to mention is ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Shutter speed, I always film double the frame rate unless I'm outside and I don't have an ND filter. Aperture, the lowest aperture that I can unless I want something to be really in focus. And I would highly recommend, if you use this camera, to buy something like the Sigma 16mm f1.4 or the 30mm f1.4 to get the cleanest image quality possible and not use the ISO on the camera itself. And speaking about ISO, I never go above ISO 1000 with this camera, again, to get the cleanest image quality possible. At the moment my ISO is set to 800, but for the most part I would set it to 500, which is base ISO for S-Log2, and this will basically give me the cleanest image quality possible. Anyhow, these are my video settings for the Sony ZV-E10. I know the S-Log2 part was a bit complicated with the overexposing, but if you have any questions about it, let me know down below. Hope you find this video informative and useful, and I guess I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.